So Isaac was my second favorite character of the show. My first character that I absolutely loved is actually a new addition, and that was Lenore.
Yes.
Oh,
Lenore was
my
amazing.
goodness.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I guess now we can.
Yeah, we can get into that. Wasn't Lenore Edgar Allan Poe's
Yes.
girl?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that name sounded familiar.
Yeah, he wrote a few times about Lenore,
That's
obviously
what I thought,
most famously in The Raven.
Yes. Quote the Raven. Nevermore. Eat my shorts. Yes, Lenore and that council of vampires.
Yeah, the four.
The four of them who I thought were sisters, and then no, they're not. No. It is. So yeah, Lenore, and then even before, Lenore and Hector. So Hector this human gets thrown into the cell of these four vampiresses, I guess, and
vampires, not to be specific,
mistresses of the night. The Hector was definitely one of the characters that I gravitated to as far as I was really interested in what was going on with him. I mean, he was beaten, he was downtrodden, he's being treated like an animal as vampires would do with humans, and just to see where his character went from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, I was very fascinated with. I think just from an entertainment value. I say it a lot, and I know sometimes it's tongue in cheek when I say it, not in a bad way. When me and Anthony talk about movies, and you guys mentioned it on the Friday the 13th episode you did, I tell Anthony, Ant, you're there, you're in Hollywood, you know about this more than I do. He has, Ant, you got a better eye for it than I ever will. And Josh, you review movies, so you see things differently than I do. I admit, I'm just sitting on the couch watching an anime for the sake of enjoying it, trying to see where the video game comes into play and stuff like that. Season 3 kicked in. Just because this is a hybrid episode, so I got to mention it. Season 3 kicked in, and I am now trying to beat Castlevania 3 for the 2020 contest. I'm working my way through.
Oh, yeah, that's also on my list. I haven't beaten it yet.
I'm using the passcodes. I'm not doing the save states, but I am legitimately using the passcodes. And I'm actually on the ship, which is funny enough. I'm on the level with the ship. But in any event, Hector and Lenore, my God.
I think. Well, Larry, dive into it a little bit, because I'm actually curious. You talk about how I'm in Hollywood. Josh reviews movies all the time. Like, I'm curious to see, like, if you peel back the curtain a little bit on what you saw with this story. Like, what was it about it that really, like, resonated with you? Because obviously you're having some type of reaction to it.
Yeah, well, it was bad enough that Josh gave the spoiler alert to us, and now I'm like, oh, it's going to be these two. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. But I enjoyed with the four vampires, you had four distinct personalities. You had the one, and I don't remember the names. I don't have it.
I got them if you want.
Okay.
So
you got Strika and Marana, and then Carmela and Lenore.
Yeah. So Carmela, yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was gonna say they each had their own part to play in kind of the grand scheme of things. To where you had Carmela was kind of viewed as the scheming vampires, they quote unquote said, but then you had Lenore was the diplomatist, you had the strategist in Menor
and Strika, right? Or
Strika
Marana
was the military.
Oh, right. And then Marana was the strategist.
Yeah. So when they threw Hector into into the cell, I mean, he's naked, he's afraid, he's malnourished, they literally dragged him for like 800 miles or whatever it was when they found him.
Are you talking about Hector or Josh?
Whoa.
He may be naked, but he's never afraid, which is even worse.
Very, very true.
Yeah. Even worse. You see, Hector, the first thing he eats is a piece of bread, and which I thought was just sponge at first. And, you see like the bug crawl out of it, and he has no choice but to take a bite out of it. And he's at the lowest point a human being could be at before actually dying. Like before being killed for mercy at this point. Mm-hmm. So, and then as the time goes on, Lenore, who yeah, being the diplomat that she says she is trying to get, at first I thought Lenore was legitimately falling for him. Like, she'd go downstairs, she'd hang out outside the cell, he was in the cell, they'd be having these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And you're made to think, oh, maybe Lenore has a heart, for a vampire, has a heart in there. She wants to run off with him. She feels bad for him. She's clearly the youngest of the four of them, so she's probably thinks the way Hector would think. She does find him attractive. He finds her attractive. All this stuff. She slowly gives him a bed, gives him a bigger cell, gives him clothes. But even before that, the human element of Hector never left him, because when Lenore reached in to give him the raspberry or whatever it was, he reached around and grabbed her by the throat, was like, I can rip your throat out right now. So even at his worst, at his deepest, darkest, bottom of the barrel, he still has that animal instinct that we all have. And then, realizing Lenore's a vampire.
Yeah.
It definitely has the upper edge at all times. But Lenore and Hector, I really thought they were going to be like this power couple by the end of the season that were going to almost like take over and become this entity to go into season 4 to truly battle for Sypha and Trevor. It turns out it went a little differently, but because what do they say? Zebra never changes its stripes, or a cougar never pounces on a hippo, or something. I don't know, but Lenore ultimately is a vampire, and she showed that at the end.
Did you mean a leopard never changes his spots?
There we go. That's what it was. So, and I kind of dug that she, after doing all this with Hector, and Hector's finally like, all right, I'm in. And in the middle of passion, she tricks him. Like, she had this plan the whole time, and he's like, bingo, here we go, game on. And nope, she had this planned out from moment number one.
Well, let's think about it like this: like to really garner someone's trust, and you kind of saw that the relationship between Hector and Camilla in season 2, where she basically had like worked on him for a while, and then he ultimately betrays Dracula because of the seeds that Camilla started sowing. And so you start to see that same aspect take effect, to where you have a broken man and you treat him nice, and you give him just a ton of attention, and give him what he needs, basically. And like, let's face it, like, when you're having sex with someone, you're at your most vulnerable. Like, there's a vulnerability that comes with sexual relations, that comes with the relationships, period. But sex is the ultimate expression of a couple's love, and it's in that you're, each party is being most vulnerable. So to me, when she ultimately ends up doing the
putting the ring on him and everything,
the blood bond with them, I like, is just one of those moments, again, is like a twist that I just did not see coming, for one. For two, it really kind of showed you who the character was, and how smart and capable she could be. And that was the moment that I kind of, like, I liked Lenore as a character. That was the moment that I really loved her, though. And the aside that she and Hector have after she explains all of the stuff that she's done to the other Council of Sisters was a really great aside. She really does have him trapped. And it's this like sad nature, but at the same time, like, men are extremely vulnerable, or can be vulnerable, when it comes to that kind of thing.
Well, it didn't hurt that she was cute as a button. So, I mean, that's what led to it. and yeah, it also shows that who you thought was the weakest of the four sisters, I can't call them sisters, of the four vampires, is probably the smartest and the strongest, really, because she's the one. Because remember, Hector is the what do they call him? Him and Isaac. Yes, Forge Master. So they needed that. They needed that for their ultimate plan. And she got it lock, stock, and barrel. And, for a human, on a human side of it, yeah, she did it pretty easily.
Well, and you can see that the way that she went about it was the way that it had to be done, because it was very clear that doing it by force wasn't going to work, which was going to be Carmela's way. Carmela's way was going to be, she was going to force him to do that, and obviously it was going to take a softer hand. So putting Lenore in that situation clearly was going to be the smart play, even though, if you remember in the beginning, Carmela didn't believe that she would be able to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then when you see how everything unfolds, now, unlike you guys, I already knew the twist that was coming with this whole story. I kind of, not because I was told ahead of time. It was just because I saw the play, because in a lot of instances, it's like when you write somebody off as like, okay, she's going to be the compassionate one. She's going to be the emotional one. So she's going to be the one to turn. That's the brilliance in her plan, because she uses all of those things to her advantage. And you can see how a little bit of kindness, or in this case, a lot of kindness, can go a long way when you're doing it in a sinister manner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what she did. She used her quote unquote weaknesses as her strengths, and it completely paid off for her. And yeah, it was just an amazing dynamic to see how we got to see Hector get rebuilt just to get shut down.
Oh yeah, he may be in a worse situation than he was before. He was better off dying at that point.
Yeah. He was. He definitely was
again.
Yeah,
to another vampire. At least hopefully
to all four now.
Yeah, but Lenore is going to have him, by the dog collar, literally, because she says, "You are my pet."
Yeah, but what's also interesting about that too is with the way that she had, and I'm curious to see where they go in season 4. She also promised him, it's like, yeah, you know what? You're our slave, you're my pet, but you're going to have a nice house to live in. You're never going to want for anything. So it's like, she's basically offering him, it's like, the price of your slavery is that you will still live a good life. You just need to do this for us.
Yeah, you're right, because you're exactly right. She did say, you're going to live in this lavish, this luxury. He's going to get everything. He's going to be treated like, or he's going to live like a king, but be treated like a pauper. So, that's an awesome dynamic.
Well, it'll be interesting to, as I say, it'll be interesting to see how they, look at that theme in season 4 of, do you give up your rights for the opportunity to live a really great life, or are your values more important than the materialism?
Yeah, because you got to ultimately ask, it's like, what good, it kind of goes back to the old adage that, to kind of bring the religious angle back into it, what good is it to gain the whole world but lose your soul, ultimately? And that's kind of the spot that he ends up. And man, like, I've been in, I don't want to say like I've been in relationships like that, to that extreme.
Whoa.
But
wait, were you in a blood bond with a vampire and had to take over the world? Oh, okay.
No, I was just going to say, I think he's talking about the hentai part.
Because I would in a heartbeat.
No. Yeah. I basically I know what it's like to take one for the team.
I get it.
As far as like relationships, like where you might not exactly like the other person, but you're in it for reasons against your will, basically.
That was the last 3 months of my relationship in college.
Ooh, Josh, I think that topic bears further discussion in another episode. We're gonna dive into the Josh history.
Okay. So Josh, let me ask you this. So in the beginning, and we were joking about it a little bit, but so we had 2 of these hentai scenes. And I guess the fourth storyline none of us were interested in, because we haven't even really talked about it, was
Well,
Alucard and the twins.
We just didn't get there yet. We found ourselves talking a great deal about all of these. So
Yeah, but I feel like, like if it was something major, we probably would have talked about. We would have been more excited to talk about it in the beginning, in my opinion, because it kind of him.
And before you go into the hentai thing, let's just touch Alucard really quickly, because I feel like the hentai thing could be a good thing to end on, since we started with a teaser of that.
Well, it's not. I'm not saying just for the sake of hentai. It was
no. I know. I just meant that
for me and Frank to talk about.
Well, what I mean is that's part of the climax of the whole show. Like, in other words, when all four stories, when they keep cutting back and forth between all of these things.
Sorry.
Yes. A different show, Larry.
Shows. Sorry. I'm not going to put one.
Right. But just to touch on the Alucard thing, because I really do think it had an important theme, and a theme that does lend credence to discussing it, especially for Josh's show. With Victims and Villains, but just the whole theme of the power of loneliness and the desperation that it gives you when Taka and Sumi show up, at Alucard's doorstep, essentially looking for, they're ultimately, you can tell they were looking for the castle so that they can use it as some type of, they had a purpose, but what they did was they played Alucard like a fiddle, because they saw this man who was broken down, who was completely isolated and lonely, and was just looking for a connection. And they tried their best to take advantage of it. Essentially, what they were doing with him was what Lenore was doing with Hector. Yep. The only difference is, obviously, they failed in their goal, right? Mm-hmm. And so we got to see how close they got to it, because Alucard, like I said, was just looking for that connection, and he was so desperate for it that he let his guard down and allowed himself to be duped by these two, by Taka and Sumi, to the point where he almost lost his life.
Yeah. Well, I think with their relationship, it felt like when you first, like we said, when you first meet Alucard, he's very depressive. There's even a point where he does meet the twins, and they say, well, how long have you been here? And he says something to the extent of, it might be a few years, it might be a few days, it might have only been a month. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. Like, I've lost basically all sense of time because of this depression and because of what I'm going through right now. And that's very reminiscent of what it feels like to go through depression. So to kind of come along, and when you've been heavy in depression for so long, and to have a person that, or in this case, multiple people that are going to basically give you purpose, that's kind of where I started to perk up a little bit, because A, it's very reminiscent of what it can take to get a person out of depression. B, it also gave him purpose in the story, because I felt like up to this point we hadn't really had a purpose for him. And when you get into to flesh Taka and Sumi out, you kind of understand where they're coming from a little bit more, which I thought was nice. But in the end, I think the biggest problem that I had with Alucard, as critically speaking, throughout the course of this, is that he started off the season one way, kind of ended basically almost the same way. Mm-hmm. And there's no real character growth for him. But also in the same way, unfortunately, there's nothing else that he really brings to the larger world or to the larger story.
Well, if I can touch on that a little bit, I think there was a bit of character growth with him, and the reason why I say that is because, yes, I think he does start and end in the same situation, but along the way, you get a valuable lesson along with that, because you saw Taka and Sumi's story beforehand, and that also plays into this really well, how they were essentially slaves in the guard of this other vampire. So their whole story was they learned that they couldn't trust anybody, because eventually those people were going to do that to you. That was their story. And then you juxtapose that with Alucard's experience of, I just want a connection. You know what I mean? I just need a connection. And now I've been given that connection only to get, what's the word I'm looking for? Betrayed.
Turned up.
Yeah. Yeah, only to get betrayed. So the real lesson that Alucard learns in this story is really about himself and about the price of his isolation. The price of his isolation and depression has become, he's gotten so desperate that he let his guard down. So and then he had a choice. At that point, he had a choice. It's like, do I pull myself out of this depression and isolation and connect to the world again, or do I go deeper into it? And as you can see at the end, when he puts Taka and Sumi in front of his castle and goes inside, he's obviously chosen the latter. It's like, no, I'm going to dive deeper into this. So we're really going to see, I think, an Alucard who's even deeper into this funk when we get to the next season.
I like that when he put him up on the pikes like that, which is very reminiscent of the actual Dracula who did that. You know, the actual human that the character is based on in the original books. I'm pretty sure that's what he did. He used to put the heads of his enemies or something on his legs. I don't know what it says about me personally, because I was least interested in the Alucard storyline of the four storylines.
Same.
Yeah, but for me, I was just bored with it.
I would put it in as of the four. If I had to pick the weakest one, I would pick his. But I do think there were some bits to farm out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I get the depression part, and I definitely noticed the isolation part of it. So I understood all that, because he was very open in revealing all the trade secrets of the Belmonts to these two twins. Before getting turned on. So yeah, to me though, it just didn't like at the end, like episode 10, I'm waiting for all four of these stories to interlock with each other. And then, as the season progresses, I can see, even though they never do, I can see where, the village, Isaac, and the vampires, I'm like, all right, I can see where all three of those can end up in episode 10 to lead in. But with Alucard, I'm like, where the hell is this going? I don't see this connecting in any way.
So I was going to say the connection to me is going to be when the threat of Dracula comes back.
Well, yeah,
that's when they'll pull him back into the fold.
But I think that they're also, and I don't know, like not being as fluent in the video game mythology as you guys are. I think that possibly the way that his arc throughout, it kind of sets him up more in line with his father, to where he kind of has a better understanding, because his arc throughout the course of this is very reminiscent of where we find Dracula in the beginning of season 1, to where he loved humans, he gave them, basically a vulnerability, and in that vulnerability, he ends up finding love, and they end up dying because of it. And so you have something that's almost the same, it's just a little bit twisted in the end.
As much as this whole series is based on Castlevania 3, with Alucard, when they finally before they end this series, I really let me know if you think about this or not. I really feel like they're going to dip into Symphony of the Night, because the Castlevania Symphony of the Night on PlayStation, that's Alucard's game. You play as Alucard the entire game. Well, except in the beginning, you are Trevor in the beginning. But, maybe that's how they end the series. Because are you Trevor in the very, you know what I'm talking about? When you first...
I think you were. I can't remember exactly. I'm pretty sure you were.
I'm pretty sure you play as Trevor for like Symphony of the Nights. When you put the game in for the first time, you jump right into like the last boss of the prior game, which technically actually I think is Rondo of Blood. But in any event, I think we're going to start seeing more aspects from these other games. But Symphony of the Night, it's Alucard in Dracula's castle. And I think that's maybe, now that it just dawned on me at this very moment, maybe that's what they're setting up for Alucard storyline-wise, is going to this Symphony of the Night storyline somehow.
It's entirely possible. And I hope we get some Symphony.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess now it's kind of time to dive into the hentai.
Okay, well, yeah. The climax, right? So the climax of all of these stories happen over each other. Like we're seeing them all unfold.
Exactly. That's how they interlock. Phrasing. Yes. All joking aside, those two scenes were imperative for something. For Lenore and Hector, it was to get Hector to fall for Lenore, for Lenore to trick Hector into becoming her slave, becoming the slaves of the 4 vampires. In the threesome, which it was, which, wow, that went away. I wasn't expecting that, because especially if they were supposed to be brother and sister, which now to me, I don't know if they were or not. That was just a weird way to get to Alucard, which is, to kill him, which is why I felt the Alucard and the twins scene was unnecessary for that, where Lenore and Hector, I completely understood why they would go that way to get Hector where he needed to get to in the story.
Yeah, I found myself throughout the course of it where, as you're watching that episode, I kind of don't you kind of don't expect it that they're going to show this, because it just doesn't fit tonally with the overarching story.
Right. Josh,
and
say anything, it would have hit me out of left field. Honestly, I would have been like, "Whoa!" I was not expecting that. No, honestly, all joking aside.
Yeah, no. But I think too that I agree with you that, like, Lenore and the Hector sequence it's a little bit, that sequence is a little bit not as extreme as the threesome sequence, for one, and for two, it also has a purpose that you're now seeing here. Whereas even if they give Alucard a purpose, to your point of making him the big bad of season 4 or season 5, and it's because of this right here, this being the linchpin that kind of sets him on Dracula's path, still to that point, I still feel like this is unwarranted. Like, you didn't need to show it as graphically as it was.
I don't mind the graphic. It's not that I don't mind the graphics part. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't bother me. I'm not offended by the graphic part of it. But I feel, so let's put everything into perspective. So this is all 4 of these stories, their peaks are happening at the exact same time. You have Lenore and Hector, right? You have Alucard and the twins. Correct me if I'm wrong. You have the battle at the church, at the
Priory.
At the Priory, excuse me. And I think you also have Isaac in the scene I was talking about with the humans.
And the battle in the town with the humans.
So all of this is happening at the same time. This is why I feel the threesome scene should have been just a straight up battle of some sort, because all those other 3 make sense. Even with Hector and Lenore being intimate with each other, it makes total sense. This is what took me out. That threesome took me out of it. Yeah.
Okay. Let me weigh in on that, because I think the reason why I didn't think that you went the battle route with that scene is because, again, Alucard's entire story was about reconnecting with people, and Taka and Sumi were the 2 people he was reconnecting with. And the reason why, and again, was it a little bit of a surprise where they went with it? Yes, but when you understand, or at least for me, when I understood the overall arc of his story, it made complete sense, because, again, this was the ultimate connection that he could make with these 2 people. And not only that, but they saw the desperation in him, and they took advantage of it in their goal of getting him in as weak a position as they could, because they knew who he was, they knew how powerful he was, and they knew that if they allowed it, in their minds, if they allowed it, Alucard would become just like their previous master. So they broke him down as much as they could, and they got him in the weakest state they can possibly get him in, because, again, he was so desperate. He was so desperate to reconnect with people that they took complete advantage of it, and they almost succeeded.
I get it, because that's his human side. You can look at it that way, because Alucard's half vampire, half human.
Right.
So yeah, that could be his human side. But, again, I like to have 2 scenes like that at the same time. That's kind of like the only thing that.
Well, look at step back for a second. You had 2 scenes of passion mixed in with, not that far back.
Oh, okay.
You had 2 scenes of passion mixed in with 2 scenes of action.
But
and to me, like, I felt like they were really, again, not only were they balancing out the 4 stories as they were, interlocking them, so to speak. But again, they were paying off the story you were following all along. Having Alucard's story, if they would have ended it in a fight, it would have been fine, but it would have felt a little bit empty. This was really what they were going for with him, and I thought going the emotional route and the physical interaction route was the way to do it there.
And I agree with that too. And I talked about this in our Deep Blue Sea episode, where I don't necessarily have a problem with.
I don't even know how you make that connection.
That's what I was trying. Like,
so
like
hold on.
Samuel Jackson shark and.
So there's a sequence. There's a sequence in Deep Blue Sea that we talked about in our episode that kind of is just over sexualizes, and if sex is used in a plot, it's I don't necessarily have a problem with it. It's to the point where it reaches over sexualization and just existing, and that's very much where, to your point, and I can understand where you're coming from, but for me personally as a viewer, it was very uncomfortable, very much a just uncomfortable to watch those sequences.
Was it uncomfortable because of the players involved, so to speak? Because it's not something. It's because let's just put it out there. It's not something we generally see.
No, this was a non-traditional threesome. Is that how I say it politely? I'm not trying to be rude or anything. That's what when you think of,
depending on perspective. Yes.
No, of course. Well, no, depending on Hollywood, because if you look at Wild Things, that had a threesome scene in it that's very famous. But right. When you think of that, and again, I'm not trying to be rude or I'm just talking the mass public with Hollywood. You tend to think that those scenes are going to be going one way, where it's the two guys and the girl. Here, it was really the guy and the girl for the guy. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's not how majority of people viewing probably would have saw that come from. And for me, that wasn't uncomfortable. I just thought it just doesn't make sense. The whole scene, that whole threesome scene.
Yeah, it doesn't. And again, I think I understand where Anthony is coming from in regards to the the connection, the need for it, how that sequence really thrusted Alucard's character arc forward into the going into the fourth season. But again, it seems a little like it overstays its welcome a little bit, to where like you probably could have had the same effective nature had it been something that starts maybe in like one sequence where you can see they're coming on to him, flashback to the Battle of the Church, flashback to Isaac, flashback to Lenore and Hector, and then somehow along the lines they're betrayed, flashback to one of those other three sequences, come back at the end of the episode, they've killed like
well, I think
could have skipped all that.
Well, no, I think you kind of see the connection between the three of them start to rise when they're training. I don't know. Do you remember when they're in the training sequence and they tackle him and they're on the ground and you see something?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, you see something going on there that's like, oh, there's more to this than just a mutual respect for each other and a need for training. There was definitely something more building. So I didn't think that's why I didn't think it came out of left field when it happened, but and the purpose behind it and everything to me made sense.
No, the left field I meant was the fact that they just showed they showed the nudity, they showed all that. If Josh didn't say hentai to us, in a chat, I would have been like, whoa, what is going on here? I'm not, if it would have been simulate, something else, if it would have been, Skinamax, it would have been fine. But I think
Skin and Netflix.
Yeah. If they would have done that threesome scene, like one or two episodes before, then like space out those two scenes. I just felt it was kind of like I didn't feel uncomfortable. I was just like, there's just a lot going on.
Well, that's the point, though.
No, but to me, it took it away. Like I said, it took it away. Either have it in a different episode, or personally, I would have rather have seen the battle where, yeah, fine, Alucard comes in contact with the two humans, and then ultimately it's about Alucard connecting with humans and then being betrayed by humans. No matter whether it's a fight, whatever.
Yeah. And I personally thought that the two scenes worked really well because you got to see how they went in two different directions. And I thought that had you had separated them, you wouldn't make that connection between the two. You saw, and that's what it was. I go, both of those stories were building to this moment. And just to see the way that each of them played out, and one went left and one went right. And I actually thought that was really clever on the filmmaker, on the director's part, to do that. I really do, because the action sequences, the two action scenes, to me, those generally went in the way that I was expecting them to. We both saw which direction they were going in. Obviously, the swerve in Trevor and Cypher's scene was Dracula didn't come back. That was the real swerve. But in other words, like, we knew in both of those scenes, Isaac was going to prevail. Trevor and Cypher were going to prevail. So I kind of already expected those. I was like, but the other two, to your point, if you didn't see the Hector Lenore twist coming, that was a surprise. If you didn't see what was going to happen with this whole threesome thing happening and how that played out, that was a surprise. I actually thought that those were the two scenes, to me, that were more powerful in terms of what you expected and what you didn't expect. But that was
Fair enough.
All right. Well,
we'll agree to disagree on that one. But
we definitely agree to disagree there.
That's the beauty about things like this. Is it's all art, and it's meant to be subjective and interpret it into each person's own way. But I know that you guys wanted to kind of talk about the video game relations with this season as well.
For me, it's not even just the season, it's the series. Again, the series is based on Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse from the NES. And maybe it's either, because I never completed Castlevania 3, I never beat it, but it as I'm playing through, for those on Victims and Villains who are unaware, me and Anthony this year in 2020, for as long as 2020 continues to exist, is we're doing a challenge, a 2020 video game completion challenge. Basically, who can complete more games between the two of us. And, so far, I'm up. What am I up right now? I'm up like 5-3 or something.
I think it's 5-2.
5-2.
I haven't really gotten into a flow.
Yeah. Well, I think we both.
And you play cheesy games.
It is quantity over quality. I will continue to say that. But
and I can tell by your quality.
But hey, listen, it's a game.
Anyway,
they made it. But with Castlevania 3. Like when the series season 1, which was only 4 episodes, I find myself going, I remember that in the game. I remember that in the game when Trevor showed up and met Cypher. That's exactly how it played out in the video game. But now, as I'm playing through the game, I'm getting further into the game than I ever have before. Now I'm starting to see from the other, even though the game came out first, I'm starting to see the other way. I'm like, oh, this happened in the show. This happened in the show. I don't know if you're seeing it that way as well, Ant, but real quick before I get your thought on it, so far, the one thing that's bugging me is there's no Grant. I'm waiting for Grant from Castlevania 3, which is the first secondary character you come in contact with that you can play as. And I've always enjoyed Grant's character in the game, even though right now I still have Cypher because of the series. Right.
Well, and all I can say is wait until season 4. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Grant comes in eventually. But yes, no. And I haven't completed Castlevania 3 either. So my knowledge of it is somewhat limited. But what I really am enjoying, to your point, are all of the Castlevania references, that keep popping up. First off, the night creatures and the evil bat things that come fly, like the characters that come popping up. It's like I remember them in the games. I'm like I'm literally pointing at them and I'm like, oh, I remember him. Oh, and I remember that one and this one and this one. And that part's really cool. To your point, the ship scene in the ship level in Castlevania 3. Again, it's an excellent connection. And Josh brought up in Isaac's story when we run into the old woman who was the last one left alive. Immediately when I saw her in that long gray cloak and everything like that, it reminded me of the characters in Castlevania 2. Simon's Curse, they're the ones that you buy stuff from. You buy the laurels from. You buy the wood from. Like, I saw her decked out in that, and immediately flashed to Castlevania 2. So the references are all over the place.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
You know, and to be honest with you, if I was watching the show with a keen enough eye, I probably would have pointed out more. But going through it for the first time, obviously, my intent was, you know, the story, the character development, all that stuff. I wasn't necessarily trying to nitpick everything for all the references, but the references are there. And like I said, I only caught a few. Castlevania 3 is definitely on my list of games that I want to complete this year as well. So I'm sure when I get through that, I'll probably start seeing other pieces.
Well, you know, I got to admit, I'm looking into Wikipedia right now just to see if there is any major, maybe that we may miss with crossovers. Yeah, we're not getting Grant, apparently.
How come?
Quoting Wikipedia, due to the limited time, Ellis, who I think is the director or the writer.
He is the writer of the series.
Opted to drop Grant Dynasty, a pirate character in the game. Ellis notes that besides the stupid name, he felt the pirate was misplaced in the setting and that the limited runtime would not allow him to develop the character fully, which I understand, but still stinks for me. Oh well.
Well, that makes sense, but again, we don't know. We don't know if there's a possibility that he can be brought back for season 4. You know, we may see the ship captain again. We may, you know, I mean, it's entirely possible. It all depends, obviously, about what they craft for the next season.
So again, I'm starting to see, I'm really, as I get further and further into the game, I'm seeing the similarities between the two. But as I mentioned while we were talking, Ant, let me get your idea on this. Like, do you foresee them dipping heavily now? Will they probably go into Rondo of Blood, which was on the PC Engine? That was the Japanese TurboGrafx 16 that one day we're going to get over here. And then do you see them dipping into Symphony of the Night maybe as the major arcs?
I don't see a reason why they wouldn't. I mean, you know, and again, it's one of those things where it's like they have a ton of Castlevania video games to reference. So, and obviously, not necessarily Rondo of Blood, but Symphony of the Night specifically, which is arguably considered the greatest Castlevania game of all time. I feel like, and again, to your point, it was Alucard's story. There's definitely an opportunity to go there. The other things to think about also is, will they go the route of introducing other Belmonts? Is there ever going to be a time we fast forward? Does the Infinite Corridor play into us? Because the Infinite Corridor can play with space and time. Does the Infinite Corridor give us Simon Belmont alongside Trevor Belmont? Or do we get very nice? Or do we get no. Stop it. Stop the music.
We're singing now.
Or do we get? Oh, I'm going to kill you both. Or do we get Richter Belmont along with Simon Belmont? Like, I'm curious to see if we're going to get
Bloodlines.
Are we going to get all of the Belmonts at some point?
They did mention in season 3. Forgive me, I can't remember how. I feel like it was when they was sitting down. The three of them were in the pub, but they do mention like a female Belmont. And the only female Belmont, as far as I know, was in the Game Boy games. So they are starting to mention other than Simon Belmont, who's like really like the Belmont, they are starting to mention other ones. And when they mentioned the girl Belmont, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Sophia, I believe it was. Sophia Belmont.
Right. So I guess the question is going to be like, do things get so dire? Do things get so dangerous?
I keep trying to do FaceTime.
Stop it. Do things get so dire that they actually will pull in all the Belmonts from across their lineage to help in whatever war is about to come?
It's like that episode of Power Rangers when all the Red Rangers show up.
Yeah, exactly. Including the original one who looks like he went to McDonald's a few too many times.
Austin St. John. Oh.
Yeah.
You ever watch his videos on YouTube when he like explains everything, then he gets like heated about it?
Yeah, no, he's a very angry person.
He's an angry elf.
Yeah, no, he's an angry ranger.
But
anyway, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of the video game elements brought into the show. I really do think, though, in this season, there was a lot more that I picked up on first go around. When I go back and watch it again, I'm sure I'll pick up more, especially after I complete Castlevania 3, which is going to be coming soon to a live stream near you. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what else they managed to pull in from the video games. And also, I'm curious to see if they pull in anything from the later ones, like on the PlayStation 2 and stuff, which I've honestly never played.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the female Belmont the was Soleil, Soleil.
Okay.
All right, that was what I was thinking of.
Soleil?
Yeah,
Soleil
Soleil,
Belmont?
Soleil, probably. So, you know, the it start. Let me ask you this: do you also think and then Josh, I want to get your idea on the games themselves. Do you think they're gonna now that they're in season 3 and they're getting this history unto itself for the anime? Do you think maybe they'll skip the games and just start going off on their own?
That wouldn't surprise me.
It's possible. I mean, you look at
I think they should.
All right, so let me I would answer this with another example from another medium. So the CW honestly is probably now at this point most famous for its DC shows like Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, and they've spent the last probably 8-9 years taking famous DC characters and bringing them to life. And there was an article that came out of Comic Book Resource that the Flash is actually going to be the first series that's actually going to do a original villain, which it seems mind-boggling to think about because but it was going to reach that point at another anyways. And look at what Batman the animated series did. If it wasn't for them creating an original character, we wouldn't have Harley Quinn.
Correct.
And so I think at this point, I think we're going to get it eventually. But at this point also, too, I think that they are basically going to tell a lot of the mythology. I think that if this series and this world has the power to take the traditional anime route and go 11, 12 seasons, 13 seasons. I think like One Punch Man, which is another anime, is like up to like 900 episodes or like 900 issues of the manga. So like I think it's fully possible that we do eventually see original content. And as long as it fits in with the world and keeps growing these characters, I have no problem seeing that, but it has to fit in with the world.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yep.
I like it. Josh, have you played now since the series started? Have you had the urge to play any of these games?
I have, and I have been secretly hunting down Bloodlines because I have a Genesis.
Okay, that's a tough one to find.
Bloodline is a pricey one.
It is, and every time I came across it, we were doing an event in Virginia Beach last fall, and I came across it. And I think the cheapest one that I found so far was like $80. And I turned to my wife and she was like, absolutely not.
That's why you can't ask her.
One day.
Dreams.
Look, $80 is not worth the fight, and it is not worth the couch duty.
But it's worth the game. But I get it.
It's definitely worth the game. Yes.
Josh, do you have any of the newer systems?
I don't. I have a PlayStation 1 and a Sega Genesis.
Okay,
then to that point, really quickly, have you ever played Symphony of the Night? Because that's an inexpensive game on the PlayStation 1.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, it's so abundant. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get that inexpensive.
I've not found any place around me that has it.
All right.
I've looked for it, but I have not had any place around here.
I highly recommend then, since you have a PlayStation 1 and it's a more affordable, get Symphony of the Night. You will not be disappointed.
Also, if you can find, Josh, you can find Castlevania, I don't know, it may be pricey, Castlevania Chronicles on the PS1. It's basically the first Castlevania game, both like in its original graphics and like had an enhanced graphics at the time. Another great way to experience the first Castlevania game.
I've played the first Castlevania. It's the only one that I've actually played.
Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, cool.
Nice.
Trying to find it, like Castlevania 3 is only available on the NES, but the reason why I asked if you had the newer systems, because you can get the Castlevania Castlevania Collection, which gives you almost all of them. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, Bloodlines.
Yeah, on PlayStation 4, Xbox One. Is it on the Switch?
It's on Switch. That's how I got it. It's on the Switch.
Yeah, I have it on PS4. So it's really cool that you
all
can
right,
do
so
that.
you don't have, so it's difficult for you to find Symphony of the Night. All right, it's good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, I've looked. That's again. That's the problem with just where I'm currently located, because it's really rural. So like
Oh,
video
yeah,
game
yeah.
stores are like
Oh yeah, I
far
know.
and few
I've
between.
I've been to your town several times.
Uh, so-
Recently, he stares into your window.
I
Yeah, I
knew
do.
it.
You.
I knew it.
Yeah, I don't live in LA anymore. I live right outside your town.
But yeah, no, if you can come across them, definitely when you get, I mean, and I understand the price for Bloodlines. Yes, admittedly, $80 is good for Bloodlines, especially if it's in the box.
It was not.
But I get, wait, it wasn't in the box and it was still $80?
It was 200 in box.
Wow. Oh wow. I'm so happy.
Actually,
I'm so happy I never got rid of that game.
I wonder which box, because I have the other one.
I have it in the original hard plastic.
Yeah, I got it in the when they redid them, like in the cardboard ones.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I have the OG.
That's a nice.
Yes.
That's a nice one. So Josh, yeah, when you get if you ever do come across though, if you see it, definitely try and pick up. Those three, because those are the only two systems you have. Yeah, Symphony of the Night, Bloodlines, I know you're looking for, and Castlevania Chronicles anyway, because it's just to play like the remix mode is pretty cool of the original. And by all means, stay away from Castlevania 2.
Yes.
Hey, I'm still waiting for you to finish the game.
Yeah, we'll keep waiting.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Oh.
I think when Charlie guest hosted on our show a couple weeks ago, he said it best. He said if Larry ever completes Castlevania 2, he should win the 2020 contest automatically.
Just a wash.
I'd be down to see that.
Oh well. But yeah, so I'm getting into it. And I want to mention as well, I am not using save states as much as I'm playing Castlevania 3 on the Switch. I am not using save states. I am using the original passcodes that I get, when I die in the game. So I am sticking to that.
Make sure you live stream the ending so we have proof.
I will do my best to live stream it. Yeah, so that right now I've been working on that. And after that, I wanna get to 4 on Super Nintendo. 4 okay. I'm not familiar with. They may be quoting 4 in the anime, and I don't even know it, to be honest with you.
It's entirely possible because again, my experience in Castlevania peters off after 2.
Yeah, it's a fun, but man, it is a difficult.
Oh, and I have Symphony of the Night under my belt.
So, all right.
All right, cool.
Yeah. Other than that, this has been a heck of an episode, I gotta say.
This is definitely, yes, this felt like a marathon episode.
I feel like this may be a 2-parter for the retro gamers.
It just might be. And might I say, Larry, that you have never looked better this episode.
Hey, listen, I can't even, my head is so big, I can't even tie the back of it.
I see.
Those days are long gone.
And Josh, I would also like to say thank you for doing a hybrid episode with us. And also thank you for wearing clothes.
And thank you for being a friend.
Thank you for being a friend.
Okay, no, we're not
gonna get sued by Disney.
We're not 3 old women, nor are we Pixar animated characters. So let's move on.
And if you threw okay, so
all right, so
let's end this up, Josh.
So I guess with that, we're gonna put this through our Rorschach rating scale, 1 to 5. We're gonna start with Anthony. Where would you give Castlevania Season 3?
4.5.
Okay.
Out of 5. 4.5 out of 5.
I'm going to use a different scale. I'm going to use the Belmont sub-weapon scale, and I'm going to give this. I'm going to give this four axes.
Okay. I'm also going to go 4.
Yeah, 4 because, like I said, some of the little bit of humor that was like it was just too much fecal matter humor for me that I just thought was weird, just a little too weird.
Considering you're a WWE fan, I find it funny that you're not liking the poop jokes.
Oh yeah, well, there is but that is true. And again, the whole, which we already talked about already, the ending sequence, one of those sequences just took me out of it a little bit, but still overall. Great season, great show, great series. There hasn't been a bad episode yet. So far so good.
Indeed.
And we'll wrap up our end just real quick. Remember you can find us everywhere on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Retro Gamers Podcast, on the Twitter at Retro Gamers Pod. And hit them with the website and the email.
www.theretrogamers.com, and you can email us at email@theretrogamers.com.
And on our end with the Retro Gamers, make sure you go check out Victims and Villains. Absolutely fantastic series, great shows. In fact, these two gentlemen, Josh and Anthony, continuing their Friday the 13th specials that they will be locked in for the next decade and a half.
I know.
And they just did 4, right? It was just part 4 you just did?
Yeah.
Great episode.
Yeah.
I truly loved it. So you guys are doing good with that stuff.
Well, thank you. I still,
Thank
to this
you.
day, I have no idea when I signed up for that or why.
So keep it up, though. Keep up the good work.
So
Thank
we had done the first episode, and I was like, we should just keep this a tradition, because I was like, I want to see what the rest of these movies offer.
Yep.
And that was kind of your blood signing right there.
Why don't you just take a weekend and record all the episodes?
That's not a bad idea, Josh.
Not actually a bad idea.
I'm just saying, you don't have to.
Well, no,
I'm
because
just-
you know what?
Josh has
You
to
know
go
what?
to the post.
It helps extend our friendship
It's
for the
true.
next like 3.5 years, and then after that, I can dump Josh like that habit.
Oh,
Ouch.
ouch. Shots to the arrow. Well, you guys can find us everywhere as I recover from that arrow. You guys can find us everywhere. Past episodes, social media, keep up with the reviews, upcoming events, contact information, and more. And most importantly, suicide prevention resources at victimsandvillains.net.
Before you get into it, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
John, only before you get in, because your ending is always very meaningful, even though I'm sitting here in a mask. But I also want to mention on our end, remember, new episodes drop every Tuesday, but every Friday right now for the foreseeable future, our classic episodes are going back up. Every Friday on YouTube and on the audio side, you're going to get the first 28 episodes are going back up over 28 weeks. We had to take them down for storage reasons. That's all cleared up. Episodes 29 to 99, audio only, are going to be put up on the YouTube page. So for those looking to catch up, as the time goes on, you're going to see that. So you're actually getting 2 episodes a week, a new one every Tuesday and a classic one every Friday.
Yep.
All right. Well, you guys can find, and on that note, if you guys want to be like Larry here and help support us on Patreon and help us get mental health resources into schools, you guys can, for as little as $1 a month, you guys get access to exclusive content and help us get mental health resources into schools. And also for $5, you guys can decide which Nicolas Cage movie you'd like to see us cover, because we're going to cover every single one hopefully before we hit 1,000. So we're locked into that commitment for a long time, because
I was just going to say,
Cage,
before you hit 1,000 Nicolas Cage movies.
basically, he's at a little over 100 right now. So you guys can help partner with that and get some good content that way. All of the money we make off that goes back into getting mental health resources into schools. So consider supporting us at patreon.com/victims and villains. But this has been Victims and Villains.
And we will catch you right here next week on the Retro Gamers Podcast.